We turn now to new inflation numbers. They've just been released, and it shows inflation rose by more than expected in March by 0.4%.
Mountainous nation in Western Europe, the rise in prices has been far less dramatic.
What happens when the value of your money keeps dropping? Inflation has been a hot topic for years, but in 2024, its effects have become more pronounced and alarming. How does inflation impact the dollar and the daily lives of people? Join us as we explore the devastating effects of inflation, backed by the latest research and data from 2024. Inflation, the sustained increase in the general price level of goods and services, is a critical economic issue that affects everyone. While moderate inflation is considered normal in a growing economy, high inflation can lead to severe economic disruptions. In 2024, the world has witnessed significant inflationary pressures, impacting currencies and the lives of millions. This video delves into the causes, effects, and implications of inflation on the US dollar and people's everyday lives, supported by recent studies and data. Understanding inflation and its causes. Inflation occurs when the purchasing power of money declines, leading to higher prices for goods and services. Several factors contribute to inflation, including 1. Demand pull inflation. This happens when demand for goods and services exceeds supply. The 2024 report by the International Monetary Fund, IMF, highlights that the post-pandemic economic recovery led to increased consumer spending, outpacing production capabilities. 2. Cost push inflation. Rising production costs, such as wages and raw materials, force businesses to increase prices. A 2024 study by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, BLS, noted that supply chain disruptions and higher energy costs have significantly contributed to cost-push inflation. 3. Monetary inflation. When the money supply grows faster than the economy's ability to produce goods and services, it leads to inflation. The Federal Reserve's expansive monetary policies during and after the pandemic increased the money supply, contributing to inflationary pressures. The 2024 IMF report examined the global economic recovery following the COVID-19 pandemic. It found that while economies rebounded, the rapid increase in demand, coupled with supply chain constraints, led to significant inflationary pressures. The U.S., in particular, experienced a sharp rise in consumer prices as businesses struggled to keep up with demand. Impact on the U.S. dollar. Inflation has a profound impact on the value of the U.S. dollar. As inflation rises, the purchasing power of the dollar declines, meaning each dollar buys fewer goods and services than before. This devaluation can have several consequences. Inflation erodes the value of savings. A 2024 study by the Federal Reserve found that with an inflation rate of 6%, money saved in a low-interest account loses its real value over time. For example, $10,000 saved today would be worth significantly less in real terms after a few years of high inflation. Consider an individual who saved $10,000 in a traditional savings account with a 1% annual interest rate. With a 6% inflation rate, the real value of those savings would decrease by 5% each year. After 5 years, the purchasing power of those savings would have eroded significantly, highlighting the detrimental impact of inflation on personal finances. High inflation can lead to volatility in investment and currency markets. Investors seek assets that offer better returns to offset inflation, such as stocks, real estate, or commodities. The 2024 report by the World Bank noted that inflationary pressures led to increased volatility in currency markets as investors moved away from the dollar in favor of assets perceived as more stable or profitable. To combat inflation, central banks, including the Federal Reserve, may raise interest rates. Higher interest rates make borrowing more expensive, which can slow down economic growth. The Federal Reserve's 2024 policy adjustments included raising interest rates to curb inflation, impacting everything from mortgage rates to business loans. Impact on people's lives. Inflation affects individuals and households in numerous ways, from the cost of living to job security. Here are some of the most significant impacts. As prices rise, the cost of living increases, squeezing household budgets. The 2024 Consumer Expenditure Survey by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, BLS, showed that the average American household spent 10% more on essential items like food, housing, and healthcare compared to the previous year. This rise in expenses is particularly challenging for low and middle-income families. Food prices are highly susceptible to inflation. A 2024 report by the United States Department of Agriculture, USDA, indicated that food prices had increased by an average of 8% over the past year. Staples like bread, milk, and meat saw some of the highest price hikes, making it more difficult for families to afford nutritious meals. A typical family of 4 in the U.S. spends about $200 per week on groceries. With an 8% increase in food prices, their weekly grocery bill would rise to $216. Over a year, this amounts to an additional $832 in grocery expenses, putting a strain on the family budget. Housing costs, including rent and mortgages, are also impacted by inflation. The 2024 National Association of Realtors (NAR) report found that home prices had risen by 12% over the past year, driven by higher demand and rising construction costs. For renters, the increase in property prices often translates to higher rents, exacerbating housing affordability issues. Inflation affects healthcare costs, making medical care more expensive. The 2024 study by the Kaiser Family Foundation (KFFF) reported that healthcare premiums and out-of-pocket expenses had increased by 7% over the past year. For individuals and families, higher healthcare costs can lead to financial stress and reduced access to necessary medical services. While inflation drives up prices, wages often do not keep pace, leading to a decrease in real income. The BLS report noted that while nominal wages increased by an average of 3% in 2024, the real purchasing power of those wages declined due to higher inflation rates. This disparity can result in reduced disposable income and lower overall living standards. Inflation can also impact job security and unemployment rates. Businesses facing higher production costs may cut jobs to maintain profitability. The 2024 study by the Economic Policy Institute (EPI) found that sectors like manufacturing and retail, which are particularly sensitive to input costs, experienced higher job cuts due to inflationary pressures. A manufacturing company producing consumer electronics faced a 15% increase in raw material costs due to inflation. To offset these costs, the company laid off 10% of its workforce. This not only affected the laid-off employees but also increased the workload and stress for the remaining staff, illustrating the ripple effects of inflation on employment. Inflation tends to exacerbate social and economic inequality. Low-income households spend a larger portion of their income on essentials, making them more vulnerable to price increases. The 2024 study by the Pew Research Center highlighted that inflation widened the wealth gap, with affluent households better able to absorb rising costs through investments and savings. Government and policy responses. Governments and central banks play a crucial role in managing inflation and mitigating its impacts. The Federal Reserve's primary tool for controlling inflation is monetary policy, particularly through adjusting interest rates. In 2024, the Federal Reserve implemented several rate hikes to curb inflation, aiming to stabilize prices without stifling economic growth. Long-term strategies for inflation control. Addressing inflation requires long-term strategies that focus on economic stability and growth. These strategies include 1. Enhancing productivity. Improving productivity through technological advancements and workforce training can help counteract the effects of inflation. The 2024 study by the Brookings Institution emphasized the importance of investing in education and innovation to boost productivity and economic resilience. 2. Supply chain resilience. Strengthening supply chains to reduce bottlenecks and disruptions can mitigate cost-push inflation. The Federal Reserve's 2024 report recommended diversifying supply sources and investing in domestic production capabilities to enhance supply chain resilience. 3. Sustainable fiscal policies. Implementing sustainable fiscal policies that balance government spending and revenue can help manage inflation. The IMF's 2024 report highlighted the need for prudent fiscal management, including reducing budget deficits and controlling public debt, to ensure long-term economic stability, public awareness, and financial literacy. Educating the public about inflation and its impacts is crucial for fostering financial resilience. Increasing financial literacy helps individuals and families make informed decisions about saving, investing, and managing expenses in an inflationary environment. Community programs and educational initiatives can play a vital role in enhancing financial literacy. Local governments, nonprofits, and educational institutions can collaborate to offer workshops, seminars, and online resources that educate people about inflation, budgeting, and financial planning. The devastating effects of inflation in 2024 have underscored the importance of understanding and addressing this complex economic issue. From eroding the value of the US dollar to impacting the daily lives of individuals, inflation poses significant challenges that require coordinated efforts from governments, central banks, and communities. By implementing effective policies, enhancing financial literacy, and building economic resilience, we can mitigate the impact of inflation and ensure a more stable and prosperous future. If you found this exploration of the devastating effects of inflation insightful, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell to stay updated on future videos. Share your thoughts in the comments below. How has inflation impacted your life? What measures do you think are most important to address this issue?